Welcome to Beyond Overeating by Wholesome Lifestyle Project, the Overeating Podcast, where I'll be showing up weekly to share with you what I've learned during my binge eating recovery, helpful tools such as yoga, mindfulness, and energy medicine. My name is Stel, and my purpose is to inform and educate so that you can fast track your recovery in healing your relationship with food and finally trust yourself around the peanut butter jar. Join me as I share top tips, my struggles and triumphs to help inspire or just entertain. Remember, there's nothing wrong with you if you can't stop overeating. That's why I'm here to guide you along the way. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Overeating podcast by Wholesome Lifestyle Project. I'm your host, Stel Coombe-Heath, binge and emotional eating recovery specialist. And I love talking about our binge eating, where it comes from, and how we can start breaking the habit of binge eating. And before I get going with that, and the methods we can use, I wanted to just share a little personal story of just something that's come up for me in the last few days, and something that we might assume when we do go on a recovery journey. So I always thought that when we recover, that we would no longer have any urges, that they would just magically disappear. And that was one of my perfectionist mindset uh, patterns that I ran on for a very, very long time. And the idea that our urges and cravings will just kind of disappear once we heal is kind of just one of those things that we kind of do put into that black and white mentality, that I sometimes talk about, the either you have urges or you don't, or either you're a binge eater or you're not, either you're good on a diet or you are binge eating. And what I've realized is that even when we start working with recovery, as we go through the journey, we start working with our urges. And if you wanting to know a little bit more about this, and if you're new to the podcast, I encourage you to go listen to episode 3, where we did talk about the 3 main causes of a binge, and or an urge actually. And that is actually hunger, emotions, and habits. But in episode 10, I actually talked about the reason why we have why we binge in the first place, and that is because of our food zombie brain, as I call it, the hypothalamus, that leads us into that uncomfortable feeling in the body, the thoughts that flood our mind, that real, almost urgency to just eat something to feel better and just get this over and done with. So I encourage you to go and listen to those episodes, just to maybe refresh your mind, or if you're new here, maybe that's a good place to start. So I will kind of just summarize very quickly. So the reason why we binge is because of an urge, and the urge is governed by the hypothalamus in part of the brainstem, and it's basically controls just certain ways of survival. And often when we are in uncomfortable positions, or whether we're hungry or just out of habit, the hypothalamus will drive us into binge eating, or overeating in certain cases. So as we start working with recovery, and we start working uh, with our urges, we can start to recognize an urge, and we can start to work with that urge in a different way than what we used to. So when we start working, or when we in the thick of binge eating disorder or any eating issues, even if you're struggling with bulimia or like anorexia, there is this thing that drives that behavior, and the thing that drives us is the urge, whether it's the urge not to eat, or whether it's the urge to purge, whether it's the urge to binge. It's all driven by that one part of the brain, which is the hypothalamus, and I call it the food zombie brain. So I'd love for you to go and listen to episode 10, where I do talk about the different types of food zombies and how they kind of show up in our lives. It's quite a fun little way of just kind of relating how the urge actually shows up. And talking about the urge, one of the assumptions that I've made during my recovery was that when we recover, that we'll never ever have an urge ever again. And this is true to a degree. There's no, and this is where I talk about the gray area. It's not black or white, it's more gray. And the reason why I say this is, yes, when we start working with the urges, they become less because we don't react to the urge. We train the brain to notice that, okay, if I don't react to the urge, then I'm not getting that satisfaction. And when we do that, the brain starts forming new neural pathways, which allows us to form other habits in nurturing ourselves without food. So yes, the urges become less, and yes, they become less frequent. Like for me, I haven't had, up until this week, I haven't had an urge for probably 3 to 4 months. And just in saying that, just because we have an urge to binge doesn't mean we have to react and actually binge as well. So let me tell you just and share just a little bit about my experience in the last few days and how my urge showed up. And my message is here just to allow you to kind of realize that you're not alone if you're experiencing an urge. And I just wanted to share how I kind of, because I'm recovered, how I kind of handled that urge and how it's not something to be afraid of. So this week in particular, I'm gearing up to run a massive race for charity. And so like my plate's quite full. Everything is quite all over the place. And my husband goes hunting in this forest area. And unfortunately, mostly when he goes out into the forest, he doesn't have any reception. And we get this warning that there's going to be severe winds and actually really, really dangerous weather conditions when those winds pick up in that sense. And the first thing that happened as I heard this news was I was worried for his safety. I was afraid for him. So this fear set in. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I just had this urge to eat a donut. I was busy like trying to organize things to see if we can get hold of him. And just in the middle of all this, in the middle of my mind, this flash of like, you need a donut right now. That's going to make you feel better. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like where did this come from, right? And immediately I saw that as the urge presenting itself. And it's because I haven't felt that kind of fear for quite a while. I haven't felt the need to like my life or my security or my partner is being threatened. So that's not an experience I would experience every single day, but it's amazing how my body immediately, my mind, my food zombie brain immediately said to me, let's have a donut, you'll feel better. And the moment I saw that, I was like, yes, there you are. I see you. Thank you, urge. I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're trying to make me feel better. And I actually called a friend. Because I lent on to friends for support, which is something that I never used to do. I would have gone driven somewhere to get the donut, and that would have been it. And that's actually quite crazy how an urge can present to us. And even years after recovery, there might be times when it does come up. However, we don't have to react to it, And when I work with my clients, um, we actually start learning what the urge is, and we learn how to put a distance between the urge and actually reacting to it. And the more we do that, the more we actually train our minds to take a different path without food. So the thing about the hypothalamus, or the food zombie brain, is it can't control your motor movements. It can't control your hand reaching for the cookie in the cookie jar. It can't control your body in driving to the Macca's drive-through and getting your favorite binge foods. That's all basically our reaction to the hypothalamus, or to the urge itself. So we need to start understanding that the part of the brain that presents the urge, the food zombie brain, is not the same part of the brain that actually eats the food at the end of the day. And if we can start making that separation, that is when we start claiming back and taking back some of our power. The food zombie cannot physically make you eat. And that is such a powerful gem of information. But it can be extremely convincing. It can tell you all the most amazing things that you just need to hear, because it knows of the pleasure or the slight distraction that you will get if you do actually give in. So we need to take back our thoughts. We need to take back our power and feel like we take back control in ourselves, not of food. Food also does not have control over us. Food does not say, eat me. That is part of the food zombie brain putting little personas into food. And this is how we start beating the urge. And this is when we can start beating the urge. This is how we can break the pattern of binge eating. We can break the pattern of leaning to food when we don't feel well, when we just feel lonely or bored, or whatever the case is. So once we break the habit of binge eating as a solution to our problems, the urge to binge becomes less and less. And the less we give into our urges, the stronger the habit of not binging actually becomes. So in my example, I saw the urge for what it was, I recognized it, and I nurtured myself in a different way. And that takes time. It's not something that just happens overnight. And that's not something that I actually saw often in myself. I actually needed someone to point out when I had an urge. So subtle ways that an urge might show up for you is oh, I'm so busy at work, I don't have time. Or this has then just been such a big day. Let's just, fuck it. Let's just go and I'll start again tomorrow. Or I just need to eat this piece, and because I deserve it so much. Other ways it shows up is, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to prepare a healthy meal right now, because, at the end of the day, like, you don't really matter. Or at the end of the day, one meal is not really going to matter in the bigger scheme of things. The urge will show up in so many different ways. And the more you listen to that, the more urgent it's going to become. So my message here today is to recognize the urge. And from there, you can start putting a distance to it. So here's 3 little tips for the next time the urge to binge comes knocking at your door. And I hope that you actually just apply these little principles. This is what I teach my clients. And it proves so helpful when we can actually just add a little bit of logic, understand that you're experiencing an urge, understand that you're not going to die if you don't eat. Just slow down for a moment and check in on these three things. So step number one is to check that you are hungry. So in episode 3, you would have noticed that I talked about hunger and how hunger is one of the biggest things that causes an urge. So the best way to avoid our food zombie mode, as I call it, that's that mode where you kind of lose control with food and you kind of just eat without remorse and you just kind of stuff your face, is the one way to do that is to actually stop dieting and never go hungry. Now, sometimes dieting is not the issue. Sometimes you might just genuinely forget to eat. Make sure that you have enough food around you. That's going to really calm down our body's survival instinct and allow us to feel more secure that we're not going to run out of food. It's crazy, I know. There's food all around us, but for some reason, our bodies are still built innately to survive. So find foods that will keep you energized and make you feel radiant. Keep them around the house, keep them around your office, keep snacks around. Eat those foods mindfully and enjoy every single bite. And make sure not to go hungry. Now, this is completely against the diet industry. Diet industry tells you to stay hungry all the time. Only eat 1,200 calories, skip your meals, only eat certain times. And that is going to aggravate things. So let go of that dieting mindset and allow your body to ease into the fact that food is always around, food is plentiful, and that you can have food at any time when you are hungry. Step number 2 is to recognize the urge, recognize the food zombie. And once you start looking after the hunger piece, that food zombie will already start slowing down. So recognize your urge, or the food zombie as I call it. You'll also start realizing that when you hear the urge or you feel the urge, that technically you are not the urge and you don't have to lean onto the urge. You don't have to eat. You can actually walk away. And this does take practice. So even if, like in the beginning, if you just say, I'm experiencing an urge, and maybe you still follow through, that is fine. You're just training your mind to recognize when you actually have the urge. The less we act on the urge, the less we will actually the less frequently we will binge, and eventually we'll start noticing these binge episodes becoming less and less and less. And step number 3 is to step into your power and really take control back of yourself. Now that we know that the urge is not the driver of us eating, we are not powerless to the urge. Now that we know that, we can choose to ignore the urge. Make sure that you eat though, if you are hungry. But make sure that you start recognizing the urge and let the rational part of your brain say no. And it's not a no to food forever. It's just a no. I'm not reacting to you. I can hear you. I can see what's happening here, but I'm not gonna react to you because I know that does not work. I know that eating that donut, for example, is not going to make me feel better. It might taste delicious for like 1 second. It might distract me from the fact that I'm stressed out at the moment because I don't know where my partner is or whatever the case is. But it's only going to be 5 minutes of eating that donut, if so, because I'll probably be rushing it. And I'm going to feel like I haven't really had that, and I'm going to crave more donuts. And it's not going to change the fact. It's not going to change the fact that my husband's life is maybe still in danger. So make sure that you actually take back your power. Celebrate every time you don't binge. This is such a big thing. Make sure that even if you have half a binge instead of a full one, make sure that you celebrate that, because we release chemical reactions in the body when we don't binge, and the body loves those chemical reactions of feeling happy about things. So celebrate your success and just know that this takes time. It takes time. And as long as you put one foot in front of the other, you will start seeing your progress become less and less. It usually, for my clients, when I take them through the journey, it takes them between 6 and 12 weeks to completely stop binge eating. And that is just a phenomenal journey. And along the way, sometimes they doubt themselves, sometimes they feel like they just don't have this yet. But as soon as they start celebrating, as soon as they start seeing that they do actually have that control, that is when magic happens. And that is when they go from a full on 4 days of binge eating to maybe a week of 1 day with half a binge to coming to me and saying, Stel, I haven't binged in like this whole week. I haven't binged at all. And that is just so fantastic. That is just huge transformation. And that's just understanding the process. That's honoring your body and understanding your urges, and then taking control back from your urge. So, just so everyone who's listening who might be concerned for my husband, we eventually, a friend of ours drove out and they found him, got him the message that he might be in danger, and he was able to pack up his camp spots before anything serious happened. But it's just amazing how an urge can still present itself, and it's just in the power of knowing, and it's just in the power of understanding ourselves and understanding our bodies that we are able to choose a different path. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to share more about this in the next episode. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and don't forget to share this with all your friends. You can do this by adding this to your Instagram story and tagging me at Wholesome Lifestyle Project, or by simply telling them about it. If you could rate and review on whatever platform you are listening, this will go a long way in helping me get this podcast out there so that I can share my message and help as many women out there struggling with food issues as I can. Don't forget, you can follow me on Instagram on Wholesome Lifestyle Project, or connect with me on LinkedIn. My name's Stel Coombe-Heath, and that's where you'll find me on LinkedIn. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.